I've taken care of you long enough. Get out of my house. Those were the exact words my stepfather, Brian, said to me on my 18th birthday. I still hear them sometimes, echoing in my head when I least expect it. But what cut deeper, what actually broke me, was what came next. I called my mom, the one person I thought would always have my back, and all she said was, "Brian's right. You need to grow up." Just like that, I wasn't a son anymore. I was a burden, and in their eyes it was time to throw the burden out. They thought that was the end of it, that I'd just vanish quietly and they'd never have to think about me again. But exactly 1 week later, they were the ones packing up and leaving the house. My house. And that's when people started weighing in. Some said I did the right thing. Others accused me of going too far, of being heartless for kicking my mom out of her home. So now I want to tell you the truth. My truth. You decide, was I right or wrong? Hey, I'm Thomas. I'm 18. Just started college. Psychology. Major small school up in Northern California. A lot of people get into psych because they want to help others heal. Me? I want to understand how some wounds don't leave scars on your skin, but they never stop hurting. I've never really been the kind of person who dwells on the past. But if I had to pick one moment that changed me forever, it was my 18th birthday. Not because something magical happened. Actually, quite the opposite. The sky was clear, classes were normal. I got a few birthday texts, nothing major, but that day flipped my world upside down. I got off the bus that afternoon walking, home like I always did, and yeah, somewhere in the back of my mind I hoped for something small. Maybe a slice of cake on the kitchen counter. Maybe a card in my mom's handwriting. Nothing fancy. Just a reminder that someone remembered, that I mattered. Instead, I walked through the front gate and saw Brian, my stepfather, standing on the porch. In his hand was my backpack. One of the straps was stretched and torn like it had just been ripped from a hook. No hello. No happy birthday. Nothing. He just let the bag drop to the porch and said flatly, "I've taken care of you long enough. Get out of my house." I froze. My legs wouldn't move, my mouth opened, but no words came out. Then I managed to stammer, You can't do that. This is Mom's house. It's my house too." He smirked. One of those smug, condescending smirks that made you feel like dirt. "Go ask your mom," he said, folding his arms. "You're 18. That means you're grown. I don't owe you a damn thing." My chest started pounding. I couldn't believe this was happening. Not like this. Not today. But before I could react, a voice came from the second-floor balcony, sharp and loud, chewing gum popping between every word. "Oh, really? You sure about that?" It was Casey, his daughter. She leaned over the railing, phone in hand, looking down at me like I was just another stray dog. She already agreed to it. Don't believe me? Call her. I wanted to scream, to shout that they had no right, but I just clenched my fists and tried to stay calm. Then Casey came downstairs, walked past me, and pointed to my backpack like it was trash. "If you forgot anything, better come back before tonight. That room's mine tomorrow." And as she walked away, she threw one last punch over her shoulder. "Happy birthday, Thomas." I stood there, staring at my backpack on the tile. It looked so empty. Like everything in my life had just been dumped out and stepped on. Eventually, I picked up my phone and called my mom. My hands were shaking, but I still had hope. I thought, maybe she didn't know. Maybe if I tell her, she'll fix this. She picked up after a few rings. Her voice was calm, like nothing was wrong. "Hey, I'm out. What's going on?" I swallowed hard. "Mom, Brian just kicked me out." There was a pause, just a second. Then she said, "I know." I swear I stopped breathing. You knew, and you didn't stop him?" She sighed, like she was annoyed. "Thomas, you're 18 now. It's time for you to be independent. Brian's just doing what needs to be done." I couldn't believe it. My heart felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Independent? I said. You think throwing me out with nothing is being independent? More silence, and then the words that finally broke me. Brian's right. You need to grow up. I stood there staring at my phone like it had betrayed me too. I asked one last thing. Just one. You know it's my birthday today, right? I heard a sharp breath on the line. Then, cold as ice. Happy birthday. And she hung up. That was the moment I knew. She didn't choose me, she chose him. I wasn't her son anymore. I was just a problem she didn't want to deal with. I stood there for what felt like hours. Just me, a torn backpack, and everything I used to believe about family shattered at my feet. Eventually, I called the only other person I had left. Uncle Robert, my dad's younger brother. We didn't talk much, but he always treated me like I mattered. 30 minutes later, he pulled up in front of the house. He didn't ask questions, just waved for me to get in. Before we even drove off, he called my mom. I sat beside him listening to the speakerphone. He went straight to the point. Linda, I'm with Thomas. He just told me Brian kicked him out. What the hell is going on? Her voice came through cold and sharp. This is my family's business. Stay out of it. Uncle Robert let out this dry laugh. Well then, consider this your last chance to apologize. I'll bet you anything, you'll be the one out of that house within the week. And he was right. 7 days later, the locks were changed. They weren't allowed to stay. Because that house, it was mine. Legally, in my name. A detail my mom never paid attention to. I didn't kick them out for revenge. I did it because I deserved better. Because no one deserves to be thrown away like they're nothing. So now I ask you, was I wrong for standing up for myself? Or was I just doing what nobody else ever did? Finally choosing me? You tell me. But because someone finally had the courage to say it out loud. Uncle Robert turned to me, looked me straight in the eye, and didn't ask a single question. He just said, calm and steady, let's go, kid. There's always room for you at my place. That evening, around 7, I found myself sitting at Uncle Robert's warm, cozy dining table. The soft scent of chicken curry drifted in from the kitchen. His wife, Aunt Helen, welcomed me with her familiar smile and a handshake that was gentle but grounding, like she was holding me together. You've lost weight, Thomas, she said, handing me a glass of water. Then she glanced at Robert, her tone turning just a bit sharper. Nobody feeding this boy properly, huh? I gave her a half smile. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. A little while later, their daughters, Jenna and Ellie, came bounding down the stairs, each hugging a stuffed animal. They looked up at me with wide eyes and asked, Is Thomas staying, Mom? He can sleep in our room if he wants. We always sleep together anyway. He's a special guest tonight. That made me smile. A real one. Small, but real. I can sleep on the couch, I offered. It's fine, but Aunt Helen shook her head without missing a beat. No need. No one in this house is just a guest. That night, I had dinner with a family that wasn't perfect, but they made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt in years. Uncle Robert sat across from me, eating slowly, until suddenly he set his chopsticks down and looked me dead in the eyes. Thomas, there are some things you need to know. About the house you used to live in. About what your grandfather left behind. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. What do you mean? He didn't answer right away. He just held my gaze, and I could see the weight in his eyes. Not yet, he said. Finish your dinner first, but tonight, you need to. Listen, really listen. And that night, on my 18th birthday, I started to understand that some truths don't just hurt. They change everything you thought you knew about who you are and where you belong. About half an hour after dinner, Uncle Robert made me a cup of coffee. The smell was soft, comforting, mixing with the warm air in their wooden house. I sat by the window, still wearing my jacket. I wasn't used to this feeling yet, the feeling of belonging. Uncle Robert sat down across from me, coffee in hand. And this time his eyes were more serious. The room was so quiet I could hear the second hand on the wall clock ticking. He looked at me for a long moment before finally speaking, slow and careful. Thomas, have you ever wondered why that house was already there when you were a little kid? I hesitated. I just assumed it was Mom's, or something Dad left behind. He shook his head gently and set his cup down. No, that house originally belonged to your grandfather. That hit me, sharp and sudden. I looked up, heart pounding a little harder. Uncle Robert didn't keep me waiting. Before he passed, your grandfather wrote a will. He left that house to you, Thomas Campbell. My chest tightened. Something in me already knew what he was about to say. I just hadn't let myself believe it. When he died, you were only 8. So legally, temporary, guardianship over the property went to your parents with proper documents and witnesses. No drama, no issues. He paused. His voice softened. But then, 2 years later, your dad passed away. The stroke was so sudden, there wasn't time to change anything. From that point on, your mother was the only adult left who had access to the documents. My heartbeat slowed. I could feel something in me slipping, rearranging. Uncle Robert leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes staring into the past. 2 years after your dad died, Brian showed up. That's when everything started to change. No one talked about the house anymore. No one mentioned your name. And you just grew up in a house that was yours without even knowing it. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My hands were gripping the armrest so tightly, the veins on the back of my hands stood out like they were shouting what I couldn't. I took a deep breath, but the smell of coffee was gone. Only bitterness remained on my tongue. The kind of bitterness you only start to recognize when you turn 18, and life finally stops sugarcoating things. Then Uncle Robert reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin, yellowed folder. "This is a copy of the will," he said softly. "I kept one after your grandfather passed. You should have known all this sooner, but sometimes people hide the truth until the day you're finally old enough to own it." He handed it to me. My fingers were still cold, and right there, at the top of the first page, bold as anything, Thomas Campbell. In that moment, I knew everything had changed, and there was no going back. Just then, the lights went out. For a second, I thought the power had cut. I looked around, confused. Then, from the kitchen, a soft glow, a flicker, candlelight. A second later, a voice, gentle and steady, began to sing, "Happy birthday to you." I turned toward the sound, mouth slightly open. Uncle Robert, Aunt Helen, Jenna, and Ellie. They stood around a tiny cake, smiles warm, eyes soft. I had never felt care like that before. So simple, so quiet, but it went straight to my core. "Happy birthday, Thomas," Aunt Helen said. Her voice carried every welcome she had ever given me. I just stood there. Didn't know whether to smile or cry. "We wanted to surprise you," Jenna chirped, her little eyes wide and shining. Ellie reached out, gently touching my shoulder. "Now you don't have to spend your birthday alone." My eyes blurred. My chest ached in a way that wasn't pain. It was something else. Something I hadn't felt before for the first time in my life. I felt welcomed. Not because of what I could give. Not because of who I was supposed to be. Just me. And that was enough. The next morning, around 9 after breakfast, Uncle Robert poured me another cup of coffee. He looked at me gently. "It's time you met someone who can help." I didn't ask who. I just nodded. We got in the car and drove into the city, to an old building with stone walls and ivy climbing up the sides. Inside, we walked down a long hallway until we reached a door with a nameplate. Mr. Stevens, attorney at law. Uncle Robert knocked. A voice from inside welcomed us in. Behind the desk sat a middle-aged man with kind eyes that looked like they didn't miss much. "Thomas, right?" he said, smiling. "Robert's told me about you." I sat down across from him. Uncle Robert sat beside me. "Go ahead," he said quietly. "Tell him everything." So I did. I told Mr. Stevens about the house, about the night I was thrown out, about everything Uncle Robert had revealed. He listened without interrupting, just nodded, scribbled notes in a small notebook, and let me talk. When I finished, he leaned back slightly and adjusted his glasses. "Thomas," he said, "based on your grandfather's will, the house is legally yours. You have every right to reclaim it." Relief washed over me. "So, I can ask them to leave?" "Yes," he said firmly. "You're the legal owner. If they refuse, we can involve the authorities. But first, I recommend we send them an official notice. If they still resist, then we escalate." A weight lifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't just floating. I had ground beneath my feet. "What should I do next?" I asked. Mr. Stevens looked at me. "Calm. Certain. I'll go with you," he said. "Back to the house. As your attorney, I'll protect your rights, especially if there's any pushback," Mr. Stevens said firmly. I let out a long, shaky breath. It felt like the weight I'd been dragging behind me since yesterday finally loosened its grip. "Thank you. I really need the support." He gave me a reassuring smile, then stood up and reached for his leather briefcase beneath the desk. "That's what I'm here for. Let's go, Thomas." And just like that, with my attorney beside me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: readiness. This time, I wasn't going in alone. No matter what my stepfather or even my mother had done, I was going back to reclaim what was mine. An hour later, we stood in front of the house, the same house I'd been thrown out of. Just yesterday, I stopped at the gate. It didn't feel real, like I was watching a memory and living in it all at once. I stared at the front door, the porch, the windows, everything I used to know, now carrying the sting of betrayal. One thought kept echoing in my mind. This is my house. But how did everything get so twisted? Uncle Robert turned to me, his voice grounding me. "Are you ready for this? If they give you any trouble, I'll handle it." I nodded, gripping the folder tighter in my hands. "I'm ready. This isn't just about a house anymore. This is about standing up for myself." We walked up to the door. Uncle Robert knocked, firm but calm. Footsteps echoed inside. A few seconds later, the door opened. There they were, my mother and Brian, her face twisted with confusion, uncertainty, and something else too, something closer to guilt. "Thomas?" she said slowly, voice tight. "What are you doing here?" Not angry, not welcoming either, just unsure. I looked her in the eye. I came home. Then I looked at Brian. I didn't owe either of them an explanation. This was my house. They had no right to keep me out. Uncle Robert stepped up beside me like a silent shield. Then Mr. Stevens moved forward, professional and calm. "I'm Thomas's attorney," he said. "According to the will left by Thomas's grandfather, this house legally belongs to Thomas. He has every right to be here and to assume full possession of this property." The words hit like a thunderclap. My mom blinked, eyes darting from Mr. Stevens to Uncle Robert and finally to me. "But this is our home," she said softly, almost like she was trying to convince herself. "Not anymore," I said. My voice didn't shake. "It's mine, and you both have no right to be here anymore." Mr. Stevens's tone sharpened. "Per the legal will and the current ownership, you are required to vacate the premises immediately. You no longer have any legal claim to this property." The silence that followed was thick. My mother and Brian exchanged a look. Then I saw it. Fury in their eyes, disbelief, betrayal. My mom took a step forward, her face hardening. "Are you out of your mind?" she snapped. "This is my home. You can't just throw your mother out." I met her gaze. There was no yelling, no outburst, just resolve. "This is my home," I said, calm and cold. "And you don't get to talk about what you did for me anymore, not after everything." Suddenly, Brian stepped toward me, his face burning red, his fists clenched tight. He jabbed a finger at me, shaking with anger. "You think you can just walk in here and toss us out like garbage? Who the hell do you think you are?" He looked like he was ready to snap. But I didn't move, I didn't flinch. Uncle Robert stepped in front of me immediately, like a wall of stone. "Back off, Brian," he barked. "Touch him, and I swear I'll have you arrested for assault." Brian froze. His chest heaved like he couldn't breathe. Uncle Robert didn't move an inch. Then my mother spoke again, her voice cracking, barely holding itself together. "After everything I've done for you, you'd really throw me out?" I stared at her. No hate, no rage, just the finality of a decision that had been building for far too long. Yes, they could glare, yell, scream, but I wasn't breaking this time. They slammed the door in our faces, but just before it shut, I heard her voice one last time. "If you want to call the cops, go ahead, but Brian and I aren't going anywhere." The door shut with a deep, final thud. I didn't move, I didn't blink. This was going to get messy, but I was ready now. 15 minutes later, the state police pulled up. Mr. Stevens was already prepared. He laid everything out clearly: my legal ownership, the verified will, all the documentation. The officers listened, asked a few questions, and then knocked on the door. After a tense exchange, they stepped back outside and told me the decision. "We've reviewed the records. There's no rental agreement. The house is legally yours. Your mother was only your guardian until you turned 18. You now have full legal authority to ask them to leave." But then one of them hesitated, his voice gentler. "That said, maybe give them a few days to figure things out. I know this is a tough situation." Something in me flared, not because I didn't have empathy, but because everyone had tried to smooth things over yesterday, while I was the one left on the street. "What about yesterday?" I asked, pulling out my phone. I showed them the footage from the front porch camera. The timestamp was clear: 3 p.m., Brian tossing my bag out like it was trash. Mr. Stevens's brows furrowed. Then something clicked. He grabbed a document from his briefcase, flipped through it quickly. "Thomas was born at 5 p.m. on December 15th, he said suddenly. "That means when they kicked him out at 3 p.m. yesterday, he was still legally a minor." The officers exchanged looks. My mother's face paled. Brian's bravado cracked. One of the officers nodded slowly. "That changes everything." His voice had shifted. No more softness, just the law. "If they kicked you out before you turned 18, that's illegal. They could face charges." Mr. Stevens pulled Uncle Robert and me aside, his voice lowered, steady and serious. "Thomas, do you want to press charges? Go all the way? You can. The law's on your side." Inside, I was torn. A part of me wanted to go for it, make them feel what I felt, show them they couldn't just treat me like I didn't matter. But another part hesitated. She was still my mother. And no matter how badly she hurt me, I wasn't ready to destroy her completely. I took a breath. I want the house back. "I want them out, but I'm not pressing charges." Mr. Stevens nodded, understanding. "Then we'll give them 3 days to collect their things, but no more visits, no more manipulation." I nodded. It still hurt, but this time, I was in control. "Mr. Stevens turned back to the officers. "We won't be pressing charges at this time, but Thomas is the legal owner, and they are required to leave immediately. If they don't comply, we'll file a formal lawsuit, and the consequences will not be minor." Silence fell again. Then, my mother's voice broke through, cracked, weak, like something inside her had finally caved. "Thomas, please," she said. "I know we were wrong, I know. But can't you let us stay, just for a little while?" I looked at her, and for a second, something inside me wavered. But then I remembered her silence, how she watched Brian throw me out and said nothing. And just like that, my heart hardened again. No. Let them call it betrayal. Let them call it cold. I was done sacrificing myself, just to make other people feel comfortable. This was my home now, And I wasn't going anywhere. She chose him over me. And now she wanted mercy. Too late, I said, my voice calm, unshaken. You agreed when he kicked me out. You let it happen. You didn't protect me. And now, I'm protecting myself. She didn't respond. Her eyes dropped, filled with something. Sadness. Maybe even shame. But no words followed. Because really, what could she say? The damage had already been done. What lay between us now wasn't something that could be fixed. And I was done letting emotions cloud what was rightfully mine. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. Not of confrontation, not of standing alone, not of them. Just then, the front door creaked open. It was Casey, Brian's daughter. The moment she realized what was happening, she exploded. "Who do you think you are, kicking my dad out of this house?" Her voice pierced the air like a blade. "You have no right to do this, Thomas!" She stormed toward me, eyes blazing. "You heartless bastard! You're throwing my dad out over some stupid house? Do you even know everything he's done for you?" I stood still, heart pounding, but I didn't say a word. I just stared at her, steady, calm, clinging to every ounce of control, even though I wanted to scream. That's when Mr. Stevens stepped forward. His voice was low but sharp, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Casey, that's enough," pointed toward the security camera mounted above the entrance. His eyes didn't waver. "You need to remember everything you're doing and saying right now is being recorded. This is a legal matter. Do not insult or threaten Thomas again." Casey froze. She understood immediately, even if she was still fuming. Even if the fire inside her hadn't gone out, his warning settled in her throat. She gritted her teeth and hissed, "You'll regret this, Thomas." But Mr. Stevens didn't budge. He stepped closer, his voice steady as stone. "Leave now, Casey, or I'll call for immediate legal intervention." The tension in the room was unbearable. Seconds stretched like minutes. But in the end, she said nothing. There was nothing left to say. They had lost. All of them. My mother, Brian, Casey. And they knew it. The police re-entered the room, their stance firm and final. It was over. "You're to leave the property immediately," one officer said flatly. As they began to gather their things, another officer turned, eyes locked on my mother and Brian. "If any of you try to harm Thomas or trespass here again, the law will respond. Hard. You got a warning today. You won't get another one." No one replied. They just nodded bitterly and kept moving. And I stood there. Still. Breathing. Something had shifted inside me. A quiet victory. A strange sense of peace. I wasn't afraid anymore. As they finished loading their things, my mother turned to me one last time. Her voice was low, barely more than a whisper. "Thomas, please, just give me 1 hour. Let me pack what I need. I'll leave right after. I promise." I didn't answer immediately. My heart weighed heavy. There was still a part of me, a small, tired part, that wanted to give her that grace, to let her leave with some dignity. But I was also exhausted from the apologies that came too late, from the silence that had cost me so much. I finally let out a breath and said, "Fine, 1 hour, but I'll be here the whole time. You'll pack under my supervision, Uncle Robert and Mr. Stevens too." She nodded, quiet, resigned. No arguments this time. Uncle Robert stood beside me, calm but firm. Mr. Stevens gave a small nod, confirmation that nothing would slip out of control again. For the next hour, they moved through the house silently, packing, avoiding my eyes. I didn't watch them much, but I noticed the way their hands trembled, the rushed way they moved. They knew this was it, and honestly, it hurt. There was a deep ache in my chest, but also a bitter sense of satisfaction. This was the cost of their selfishness, the price of choosing pride and control over truth and love. Uncle Robert and Mr. Stevens stayed alert the whole time. Nothing left the house without being seen. They ensured no documents, no valuables. No loopholes would be used against me later, and when the hour was up, I turned to my mother and said quietly, "That's enough. Your things are packed. Anything you didn't get to, I'll leave outside the gate in 3 days. You can pick it up then." She didn't argue, didn't speak, just lowered her head and walked out, with Brian and Casey behind her. No drama, no final plea, just silence, and a door closing behind people who once called this place theirs. And me? I was still standing, still breathing, still trying to grasp the fact that I had taken my life and my home back. It's been 4 months. Now, the house, my house, is finally under my name. The legal process was exhausting, but it ended exactly as I'd hoped. I can finally say this. I reclaimed what was mine. Not just the property, but my peace, my freedom. And in all that time, not once have they come back. Not a message, not an apology, not even a whisper. And you know what? I haven't missed them. At first, the silence felt eerie. The house was too quiet. No tension, no yelling, no walking on eggshells. But slowly I realized that silence was peace. That emptiness was freedom. This life without them? It's the one I should have had all along. Not because I hate them. Not because I want revenge. But because I deserve better. I don't need to tolerate lies just because we share blood. I don't need to carry the weight of toxic relationships just because they're family. These past months, I finally lived honestly. Breathed freely. And that's worth more than anything they ever offered me. Most importantly, I know this now. I did the right thing. For too long, I gave away pieces of myself, trying to earn love that came with conditions. Trying to please people who never truly saw me, but not anymore. Now I've reclaimed not just a house, but myself. So to anyone out there who's feeling stuck, used, controlled, manipulated by people you once called family, I want you to hear this. If you're standing at a crossroads, torn between your head and your heart, between cutting ties or hoping they'll change, choose you. Do what's right for your future, even if it's hard, even if it hurts. Because once you take that step, once you stand up for yourself, you'll realize something powerful. You were never the problem. You were never asking for too much. You were asking to be seen, to live freely, to breathe, and you deserve that. So be brave. Make the hard choice, even if your voice shakes. Even if you walk away alone. Because sometimes the most powerful shifts in life begin with one small act of courage. And always remember this. No one can take your life away from you, unless you let them. Before I end this story, I want to hear from you. Was I right or wrong to make my mother leave the house that legally belonged to me? If you think I was right, comment 1. If you think I was wrong, comment 2. But more importantly, share your thoughts. Tell me how you see it. I genuinely want to hear your perspective. And if this story moved you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more stories, more truth, more healing, more moments that speak to the heart. Thank you for watching, for listening, for standing with me through every part of this journey. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone stuck, someone hurting, someone who needs strength, share this. Let's keep growing. Let's keep healing. Let's keep getting stronger together.